Hello everyone and welcome to the Young China podcast. We are a half Chinese Brit and a Siberian Russian living in China. We use our unique perspectives to demystify and translate Chinese culture and lifestyle. My name is Lucien.
My name is Artem. We are entrepreneurs who made it in China and now we are sharing our experience with you from the most attractive city in China to expats. This is the news.
This is actually one of my favorite topics. I think it's the favorite topic of basically everyone living in China. Whose city is best? Which region is the best? Why mine is better than yours? Why yours sucks? And there's this really great rivalry between everyone in China. I mean, a very friendly rivalry. And this is a fantastic topic that we're going to be speaking about today.
You haven't named topic yet. So the topic is like, what is the best city for expats in China? But let's talk about Shanghai and Beijing and other cities also.
Okay, so this is fresh news that has just come out that Shanghai has again been nominated the most attractive city for foreign talent in China. And this is the 8th executive year.
The top 10 cities also include Beijing, Shenzhen, Hangzhou, Guangzhou, Hefei, Nanjing, Chengdu, Qingdao, and Suzhou.
I think that's really interesting that if you look at this list, there's a few names that people who are not even familiar with China will know, right? Beijing, Shanghai, Shenzhen. But then you get into smaller places like Nanjing, Qingdao, Suzhou. But the one that really surprises me is Hefei, which is the provincial capital of a province called Anhui. Anhui is a very... Anhui, sorry, I don't know how to say this without sounding a little bit rude, but Anhui in the imaginations of Chinese people is a very...
Nothing happens there.
Yeah, nothing happens there. Right? It's a very grey kind of place, like nothing very exciting or interesting happens there. So I'm a little bit surprised to see Hefei on this list. So the other places like Nanjing, that's the old capital of China, very beautiful, very historical. Chengdu is very famous for like hot pot and very spicy food, and they've got pandas. Qingdao is right by the sea. Suzhou has a lot of history and wonderful parks. Guangzhou, as you know, is very famous for trading and it's on the southern coast. Hangzhou is one of my favorite cities. Beautiful, beautiful city with Westlake, which is a UNESCO World Heritage Site. And then we have Shanghai, Beijing, and Shenzhen.
So deep description about the cities. Chengdu, they have pandas and very spicy food. Yeah, that's why all true. Expats love this city.
Well,
right?
Come on. That's exactly...
No. That rating is not about like touristic thing and you love pandas, whatever. It's just like serious thing about like where foreign talents go to work and live and probably bring their families. And like having pandas and good hot pot is not the main reason they go there, right? So there involved there 23 indicators spanning 5 fields: policy environment, government affairs environment, working environment, living environment, and science and innovation environment. That was how the ratings come up. So, and in this case, for sure, Shanghai is the best. If you check all these policies.
Yeah, I agree in some ways.
And Beijing in the second place, which is also kind of obvious. So it's like 2 capitals. And then we go, Shenzhen is also obvious. What is Shenzhen? Everyone knows it's like Chinese Silicon Valley innovation hub. And like it's close to Hong Kong. It's warm weather. It's totally new city. So yeah, sure, Shenzhen. But then Hangzhou. Actually, my favorite city also is Hangzhou.
That's actually my favorite city. Are you copying me?
Yeah.
That's my favorite. You heard me say that before.
Yeah, I told
and now you've decided.
No, Kunming is also not bad. I'm doubting
now
about.
You've changed your mind.
Kunming is good, but Hangzhou for sure is more developed. And I mean, like for living, for sure Hangzhou is more comfortable. But Kunming is so chill, and they call it like spring city because it's always like a spring weather because it's in the mountains above 2,000 meters. And so it's always, even in summer, it's not that hot.
I actually just got back from Kunming. I was there in the summer because we were filming there with the TV show. The day I ran China, the Mango TV and Discovery Channel TV show that I'm a star of. And I'm not promoting myself, I promise. But I was wearing a jacket and we got there in August.
Yeah.
I was wearing a jacket in the city.
Amazing.
And it was so nice to get out of Shanghai, which was like at the time was like 37 degrees. I mean, just raging hot.
But the most what I like in Kunming, which is not in top 10, people. People are so nice there because a lot of Chinese minorities, like ethnic minorities, and even like Chinese people, Hanzu, they are a bit different there. I don't know why, but they are very, very friendly. They are so happy because it's close to Southern Asia, right? Like Thailand and Cambodia, where people, their happiness level by a lot of researchers is higher than many other countries. So probably this South Asian vibes influence Yunnan people. So they're like more happy, more relaxed, you know. So in my rating, Kunming will be here like after Shanghai and Beijing, I think. And after Hangzhou. Maybe.
I think it's also interesting to note that officially there are 500 cities in China, right? That's almost unimaginable. 500 cities, and over 120 of them have over 1 million people.
I heard over 200.
Oh, really?
If you it's different rating. If you talk about municipalities, like all together, when city including like villages near you, so it's more than 200.
But actually, just as a thought exercise, that's just something that is so unfathomable to people. Like, how can you even imagine that? So on this list, there are 10 cities, but there are 500 cities across China.
Yeah.
That doesn't include the smaller towns and the villages that don't rank as a city, right?
Yeah.
But which are still beautiful places to live and visit. Okay, so then let's get onto our actual topic of conversation rather than just talking about which our personal favorite cities are. Let's talk about what's better, Shanghai or Beijing.
No, let's talk first about Shanghai. Because like 23.7% of the country's total foreigners live in Shanghai. It's just like over 200,000 expats. And this is who live here by working visa, and then like family visa and students, whatever. So it's altogether even more. It means like professionals and talents choose Shanghai. And you know what is very interesting? That like 8 Nobel Prize laureates and 1 Turing Award winner also participated in this voting, and they gave votes for Shanghai,
Wait, you're saying that there are 8
Nobel Prizes laureates.
There are 8 foreign Nobel laureates who live in Shanghai.
No. Probably they've been here. They have some connections. I mean, like they also gave their votes for this. A total of 58 foreign experts based in Shanghai have been granted the Friendship Award, the highest honor the Chinese government can bestow on a foreigner.
Do you have that award, Artem?
Probably we will have one.
One day.
No, really. You know what? My colleague, Russian guy, he's probably will get it this year.
Wow.
Yeah. But he's staying in China more than 15 years. He works in Chinese media field.
But you're getting close. You've been here 12 years now?
8.
Oh.
8. I related to China 12 years, but constantly living is 8 years.
Well, but by that definition, I've been related to China my entire life. Where is my friendship award?
I don't know actually what does it mean. If you have this award, you can, I don't know, what you can do. We can make research about this.
So, every time I meet one of my friends from Beijing in Shanghai, or I go up to Beijing, we always have this conversation. And I think in the most simplest terms, we talk about Shanghai being historical and having this really great vibe and having a lot of facilities that foreigners are used to, right? International schools, hospitals, restaurants, bars, all of that stuff. Whereas Beijing...
It has all of this too.
But it has terrible, terrible traffic. It has the worst traffic. And smog. But also it's a very bizarrely set out city.
Now, for me, it's also, as they say, Beijing is the big village. Really, I can feel these vibes of a tier 2 city, tier 3. No.
What do you mean by that?
I don't know, it's just like vibes. In Shanghai, you can feel you're in like mega city, megapolis, like a big thing, The same vibes you can feel, I don't know, in Paris, in like Moscow. But when you're in Beijing, it's so like, like you're in your neighborhood. Maybe a lot of people love Beijing because it's more cozy. Really, it's more cozy
I know what you mean.
and more relaxed. It's like not that dynamic like Shanghai. Shanghai is like Hong Kong, whatever, like a big cities, a bit like there is a yali on you. I don't know, pressure. You can feel this pressure. In Beijing, even in city center, you can feel this like, relaxed vibes, this like granddads sitting, drinking the like beer or like argotol, like it's a Chinese alcohol. I don't know, it's like, or in the city center near this like Guomao, you can see much more people like spitting on the I don't know.
I know what you mean about Beijing having this kind of village vibe because there's no real center, right? There's actually a whole bunch of centers, which makes everything feel a little bit, or actually very disconnected. So one of the big centers is called Haidian, and the other big center is called Chaoyang. And to get a car from one side to the other, on a good day, will take you about an hour. But on a bad day, it'll take you an hour and a half to 2 hours. And so you think about how these two centers of the city, and you think about how disconnected these two centers of the city are. So how can you feasibly in one day have meetings or have a meeting of minds between people from different industries from these areas coming together? So I know exactly what you mean about things feeling isolated there.
But another thing, Beijing is like a cultural capital of China, really. I'm not talking only about this like Gugong, Forbidden City, or like some travel destination, or Great Wall. I'm talking about like people and exhibitions, and like Chijuba is 798, the art district, the biggest art space in Asia. And you can feel these vibes. And there are much more musicians in Beijing, much more artists. In Shanghai, yeah, but it's more like, glamorous, trendy. Commercial, really commercial, like 吹牛 here, like, how to say in English?
Like showing off, bragging.
Yeah. And in Beijing, it's a real art, you can feel it. And Beijing is also kind of a capital of Chinese rock music. It's like underground punk and rock scene is big and huge in Beijing, and like real rock guys in 80s, like they attracted from whole China, went to Beijing. I know this is like a Beijing rock legend. I know one guy who's like a friend of my friend from Urumqi, from Xinjiang, a Chinese guy who just took his guitar and one like backpack and then went to Beijing for like to become a star, a rock star, to play somewhere. And as Shanghai's electronic capital, electronic music capital, like all these underground clubs and fashion clubs, clubs thing is here.
I know exactly what you mean about Beijing having this kind of underground vibe because it's a northern city. It's tough living. It's cold. It's dirty. It's smoggy. It's still kind of grey. It's still got this very kind of old communist Soviet kind of feel to it. So outside of the big skyscrapers here and there dotted around the different city centres of Beijing, a lot of the old buildings, they still exist, right? So a lot of the architecture from the 60s, 70s, 80s. And I think that really informs the way that people feel about the city and the way that they feel about themselves there.
So you're saying Beijing underground vibes? No.
You don't think so?
I think like Shanghai is, if we talk about like youth culture, underground culture is here in...
No, but it's a different kind of thing here.
Underground there is punk rock.
Here in Shanghai, it's more led by fashion rather than being super alternative. There is some element of that, but here, like you say, it's more about showing off, I think. Whereas in Beijing, I've met a lot of musicians, like you were saying. Actually, there's this one example that I have. I remember getting on the metro and seeing a whole bunch of people reading books. I was amazed because in Shanghai, everyone's on their phones all the time, right?
Yeah.
And to see young people reading books, that blew me away, actually.
I don't want to like compare IQ of the cities, but in Beijing, really, I met really more like intelligent and educated people. Like more deeply when you really
the deeper
can
people,
talk about really some deep topics with them, not only about politics. This is also another thing. Shanghai people don't care too much about politics, while Beijing, which is obvious its capital. Like every taxi driver or granddad will talk with you about politics, right? But they accept politics. They also can talk about a lot of things, about literature, really. I mean, like a lot of topics. Just like the more, I don't know how to say it. I don't want to offend Shanghai people, Just Shanghai people are busy with earning money, while Beijing people, they're already like in the center of China, let's say like in the capital. So they're busy with their mental health. I don't know.
I mean, the thing about Shanghai and Beijing is just to be there in either of these cities, the vibe, the feel, the atmosphere is so different. Even in the built-up areas or the CBDs, they just feel different. The way that people walk, the way that people talk, the way that they dress, it's all completely different.
Really, even I live here in a French concession, which is also kind of a neighborhood with like low buildings and like, so you still feel you're not in like big city center. There is like grannies and granddads, you're still like a local, but it's not still the same vibes as in Beijing. Even I'm not living there, when I come there and like in the center, I go into hutong to some cafes or something like this.
The hutongs are the old Beijing stone houses, right?
Yeah. And I really feel there like a local more than in Shanghai, because I know these vibes.
I think there's also a northern attitude, right? Not just Beijing, but all of the north. They're a bit more...
Kaifang, open.
They're open, they're more direct, they're less shy, they will take the initiative to talk to you. So despite the weather being so much colder, actually the people are a lot warmer. I really enjoy every time I go to Beijing because it's just a completely different vibe.
Yeah, maybe it's also Shanghai got influenced by Western individualistic culture, where everyone is like, keep distance from each other, while Beijing is still like true China, which not got influenced by Western.
Oh, but it's small things like this, like on that same metro ride where I saw a bunch of people reading books. I remember I was standing near the door of the metro and someone tapped my shoulder to get off. He actually tapped my shoulder and said, "Excuse me, I want to get off." I have never experienced that in Shanghai. Like in Shanghai, you get an elbow in the ribs because they're moving past you, rather than saying, "Excuse me, I want to get off." So it's these subtle differences, right? So despite Beijing being a little bit more direct and rough in some ways, people are a lot more refined and civilized there.
Yeah, maybe. It's not civilized. I mean, like, it's still, I think it's really Shanghai spoiled by Western culture, let's say like this. Or not like Western, like by the big city vibes. While Beijing is still one of the biggest city in the world, but it's keep real Chinese vibes. Like the best thing what Chinese like culture have is remains it. And then that's why I also... When in Beijing, you're asking your way somewhere, people really can bring you by the hand there. While Shanghai, I mean, it could happen, but not that big chance. They will say, go there, blah, blah, blah. Or even like, sorry, I'm busy. I'm going to earn my millions. While in Beijing, it's like more chill, really.
You should stop asking people in Rolls Royces direction or for a lift to where you're going then.
No, really, it's interesting. I love more Shanghai. I don't want to live in Beijing, but actually more about because of weather, smog, and traffic. Really, this is like really important things.
Yeah, I think you're completely right on those three factors. And I know a surprising amount of people who've moved from Beijing to Shanghai. I don't just mean expats, I also mean locals as well. Maybe not Beijingers themselves, because they're obviously a very proud people to be coming from that city. But people from other parts of China who've first gone to Beijing and then they've decided to actually I want to go to Shanghai. I've met a lot like that. And I think less the other way around.
Beijing is much cheaper. The interesting thing, Beijing is a capital, but there are like a lot of things much cheaper than in Shanghai. Much cheaper. The same price as like, it's cheaper than Guangzhou even. I mean, like, I don't know why, because also they work on it. I mean, like the government of the Beijing, they give this good prices for transportation, like metro and buses. I know it's still kind of 3 maybe or something. I mean, like, or 2 even. I mean, like, it's cheap, and you can have a proper dinner Beifang dinner, northern dinner.
Lots of
They're,
potatoes and meat,
like,
right?
I don't know, 3 times cheaper than Shanghai.
No, come on.
Yeah. It's cheaper.
Okay, well, I'm going to Beijing next week, and if I don't find your cheap meals, I'll be very, very upset.
I think it's really cheaper. Even like water is cheaper there. That's what yeah, really.
Even smog is cheaper than that. You just breathe it in for free.
Smog. Yeah, it's a big thing. Even like here in Shanghai, after Shenzhen, the cleanest city, the clearest city in China, really. It's like by a lot of ratings. Is
What, Shenzhen?
Shenzhen, yeah.
What, where all the factories are?
No. Which factories? Hardware, innovation, high-tech factories. Really. You can check Shenzhen. That's why it's like on the 3rd place, I think. Because it's really, like environment. And not only southern climate, but the quality of the air and the sea breeze, all the things for sure is much better. After that, and I moved to Shanghai more than 1 year already, and I realized how I depend on the sun and the blue sky. And after Shenzhen, here's not good at all. But I can imagine what will be in Beijing when I will live in winter and see this smog and like gray thing. And and people wearing black clothes. They're all in dark clothes. So you are like in a dystopia movie, it's like dark.
So actually, one of my friends from Beijing, he calls Shanghai China Light, because Shanghai is basically almost not living in China, right? A lot of people who don't speak Chinese live here very easily, very well. You have a very high level of living, like you said. All the amenities, all the facilities you could possibly want, they're all right here. You don't have to go through the inconveniences of being a foreigner in a different country in Shanghai so much. And certainly you don't have to go through like the language problems or the cold or the dirt or those kinds of things, right? So really living in Shanghai, we're very privileged to be here, but
we're not China.
We're not really in China.
It's not China at all.
Right? We're just in this kind of weird international bubble. I don't mean international because there's lots of foreigners here. I mean the locals here, they're very, very international in their outlook and the things that they do. So that brings me on to my next point. My business, which helps a lot of foreign brands come into China, I think I couldn't do this in Beijing. Not so much. And certainly no other city outside of Beijing and Shanghai would I be able to do this.
As for me, I think Beijing probably could be very suitable for Lao Wai meeting, like cultural consulting, cultural marketing, because I don't know yet, but I'm moving in direction of Chinese art and all the things. No one understands what's going on. Me too, but I'm trying to get into it. And actually, a movie industry is also in Beijing, I mean, like the places, like movie towns and cities where all production, probably not all in Beijing, but the biggest offices of the biggest companies, movie companies, all in Beijing, and TV and all the things, and media. And actually, Beijing we're saying like Shenzhen is a Silicon Valley of China. No, it's hardware Silicon Valley of the world. But Beijing is still Silicon Valley of China. Do you know like Zhongguancun? It's like first tech park in China, which was open 80s. And it's like more than 50% of Chinese unicorns, companies, startups is all from Beijing. So it means we could say like, yeah, Shanghai has money, whatever, but the biggest companies, offices, and like the best startups are still coming from Beijing.
But let's not get confused about this. It's very, very important to have your headquarters in Beijing, but that doesn't imply that a major part of the workforce is also in Beijing. The headquarters has to be there because of the government relations that you have to have when you're doing things on a big scale in China. You have to be connected with the government. You have to know what the policies are coming forward. You have to know how to implement stuff.
Yeah, that's why I'm moving to Beijing. Hey, when they will defeat smog. Probably in 5 years, they say, in 10 years.
So in China, a lot of the economy follows the 5-year plans that the government rolls out. And
guanxi with government is important for any business.
Relationships with the government.
Come to one high level, you should communicate with government. Otherwise, you will not develop.
There's actually a phrase in China that once you become over a certain size, your company is no longer yours. It becomes the country's, right? So Alibaba, Meituan, all of these big, super, super famous companies that everyone has heard of, because they affect so many people, they have to be regulated in a big way by the government, right? Because, for example, like WeChat, like there's a billion people on WeChat with all their data and all this stuff, and so the government has to regulate it in some way, whether it's to prevent
it. Even in the US, it's the same,
but it's not the same there because it's
not the same, but still they're trying to regulate.
They're trying to regulate it
now,
right after a lot of the scandals have happened. But in China, it's a proactive rather than reactive regulation.
Yeah, I mean, like when you start a company and you aim like on the highest league, for sure you need to realize one day you must to work with government together to develop your products.
Mm-hmm.
And it's okay. I mean, like it's kind of a agreement.
I mean, coming from a Western perspective, it's an odd thing to come to China and understand that the government here isn't this kind of big, scary, oppressive power that you kind of expect it to be. It's more like a system where you can kind of get things done. It's very long and complex and complicated, but there is a system there and it's kind of there as a framework to make things happen.
Yeah, I mean, like if you use it in the right way, it helps you.
Yeah.
I mean, like government here really, I mean, like in Russia, it doesn't work like this, really. Government trying to squeeze all things from you, you know, like all money, all like whatever. But here they want your company works well, and then you can give a lot of like
tax,
so you can employ a lot of people and make all people happy, you know. I mean, like it doesn't go so deep when you are not that big business. Even on middle enterprise, they don't care that much. I mean, you know, and if you are small business, no one cares at all. Okay, we are coming to our favorite business topics, entrepreneurs, but it's too much. This podcast is a relief from all these business things, and we talk here about culture more. So, Beijing is government city, and that's why many big corporates open their headquarters there. But not only because of this, all corporates are there, but because of the brains, you know? Best universities, best research institutes are all in Beijing, historically.
And that's really interesting about Beijing and Shanghai. So one of the city centers in Beijing is called Haidian. And that's where all of the big universities are.
Zhongguancun is there,
And that Haidian district is within the inner limits of the city, right? Whereas in Shanghai, the university block, which is in Songjiang and Minhang, that's miles away. I mean, really miles and miles away from the city center.
Now, Haidian is also not that close.
But it's not far like Songjiang is, man.
I don't. But here, some universities also like in the city
But those
center.
are the old traditional ones, right? The old traditional universities, of which there are like a handful in Shanghai.
Where is Jiaotong University?
They've got two campuses, one in Jiaotong University metro station in the city center and a campus outside in Songjiang. On the whole, the universities in Beijing, they are more central in the city than the universities in Shanghai, which are out in a very far away designated education zone.
I don't agree. I mean, like it's Haidian is not city center at all. It's far away, and with traffic, it's too far away. But
it's third ring road, man. Yeah,
it's far away.
It's not that far away. It's not like Songjiang. You've been to Songjiang? Of course you have. It's a 90-minute metro ride.
The thing is, to these universities, they don't need to be in city center because in Haidian, they have this Zhongguancun, which is like Chinese Silicon Valley, and all companies are there. So it's literally like this. You cross the road of your campus and you go to get internship in one of the biggest companies in the world. Yeah, it's really like this.
Yeah, sure.
So it's so convenient to everyone. And if you want to open startups, they have this like startup avenue. You just go there, a lot of accelerators, incubators, whatever. You come with your idea. So, I mean, like after classes, and you can get a small grant for developing this. I think Shanghai in this case is more, more market rules here works, you know. there is you can really get support, and I don't know, it's something like about big vision and idea. Here is all about money.
Mm-hmm.
So I mean, like, I don't know, in these terms, Shanghai probably is not the best place for young startups.
I mean, you know, you and I are both entrepreneurs, and Shanghai has its own benefits and downsides. And I think ultimately, Shanghai doesn't need startups. Neither does Beijing. Not really, right? Shanghai doesn't need startups because they get taxed from these.
There are so many events here about startups. Still,
sure.
Why?
But the thing about Shanghai is it doesn't need startups because it's got so many big companies who are here, headquartered here, paying loads and loads of tax, right? But remember, China has this big policy of innovation and pushing forward, you know, starting new companies, new technologies. And so I would say for that reason, there is a lot of push in Beijing for that to be happening, these startups to be happening. Whereas Shanghai, I would say a lot of the startups I know in Shanghai, they're not these like high-tech, changing the world stuff. They're brands, agencies. They're about making money. I mean, just purely about making money rather than making a big change.
So it's not about lack of big companies in Beijing. It's the more probably headquarters of big companies in Beijing than in Shanghai. Just because here is different goals. Here companies come to make money and to get to the market. And there is companies about like really innovation, high tech, and like more long-term strategies and more like with a scientific basis and tech basis, you know. And here is like all about, again, marketing, financial, and like different creative, fashion, all the things is here, which is all about commercial money. And if we talk about it's like advice for you if you are like young entrepreneur or startup. If you have a high-tech startup or like innovations, all about high-tech is Beijing. High-tech hardware, Shenzhen, exception. And actually medical field is very developed here in Shanghai. It's a big cluster here, right?
Oh, that's really interesting. I didn't know that actually.
Yeah. Shanghaiese companies are like leading in different like research institutes, and medical cluster is the biggest here.
I think we should talk about the people of Shanghai and Beijing.
I hate Shanghainese people. That's what's saying Beijing people. And Beijing and Shanghainese people the same about Beijing. But I think if we take Chinese people in general from another regions, they probably more
prefer Beijingers over Shanghainese, right? Yeah.
Because they all say Shanghainese people are very snobby. They think about themselves too much. They like to show off their money, whatever. Because like really, probably, I don't know about data, but there are a lot of rich people in Beijing. But you will never see that many like super cool cars, like very expensive clothes, all these brands, luxury thing is more about Shanghai.
I will say this though, I'm not sure if it's the same in Beijing, but Shanghainese have actually a very big reputation for being very lazy. Because they already have a house here, so they don't need to go and earn money. And obviously house prices in Shanghai and Beijing are like mega, mega ridiculous. So if you already have a house here, your parents already give you a house, then you don't need to earn that much. So I know personally a lot of Shanghainese because of one of our clients, which is a very big hotel. A lot of the local people who work in that hotel, they only get like 3,000 or 4,000 RMB a month. I know a lady who's been there, working there for 12 years. She's only just gotten a raise to 6,000 RMB a month after 12 years. She's older than I am. That's incredible.
I mean, it's the same for any big cities. I mean, it's the same for Beijing, for sure. Local people, I mean, there is also, they don't work. They just like...
But I think Shanghai is particularly like this. There's this attitude about it. And there's this very, I mean, even the Shanghainese, they say about themselves, 我们很喜欢一个很安逸的生活, which means we just really like a relaxed life. Like, how many Shanghainese entrepreneurs do you know? Shanghainese locals?
Not many. But I don't know much Beijing entrepreneurs also.
We're not in Beijing, and that's the whole thing, right? I think I know more local Beijing entrepreneurs, even though I don't live in Beijing, than Shanghainese entrepreneurs. And I've been living here almost 6 years now.
I don't know. I don't think any difference in this case. It's just like problem of the big cities, of a metropolis. When outsiders come here and they're struggling for their life, they work hard. That's how they become more successful than local people. This is the same for Beijing. This is the same for Shanghainese. And I don't know. I think still it's not about laziness. Beijing people are still even more relaxed. And that's all. Even in earning money thing and all things. Just like comfortable way of life, while Shanghainese, I don't know what they do. They're like spending money and still complaining a lot.
But actually, it's not the Shanghainese themselves who are spending. Like a lot of the gajillionaires you see in Shanghai riding around in Lamborghinis, they're on the whole not even from Shanghai. I would estimate at like 90% are not Shanghainese, like not locals.
But the interesting thing that 富二代, this term,
second generation rich,
like rich kids, it comes from Beijing first, really, because it's second generation, not of entrepreneurs or businessmen kids. It's about government guys. Yeah.
So they're called 官二代, right?
And when I first time came to China 10 years ago and went to Sanlitun, I've never been to Moscow before. And I saw all these like rich kids. Like that time I was, I don't know, 20 years old. And the same guys, or even like teenagers, was driving Ferrari and all the thing on Sanlitun. And I was so shocked. I mean, like I did understand something about China. I didn't have a lot of myths about this in my head, but that was so surprising. I mean, like, because I've spent about few days just like walking around Forbidden City and another districts, which is not that bright like Shanghai. I mean, like here, you don't need to go to special districts. Even in my Nanxiang, there are a lot of rich cars or whatever. Like just like, I mean, like luxury here is everywhere. But in Beijing, luxury is like, it's in some places, in like Sanlitun. Yeah. And then after a few days in Beijing, I came to Sanlitun and realized, that's how I can see that Beijing people also have money and by 富二代.
The 富二代 concept, I always thought was more about, say, Zhejiang province and then Guangdong province, because they're the ones that have a lot of factories, right? So it's the kids of the factory owners who were that first generation of rich.
Yeah, so you can feel it in Beijing and just in some places. And Shanghainese people like to show off themselves everywhere, in every aspect of their life, really.
Artem, where is your favorite place in Shanghai?
Nanxiang,
your faraway countryside. Do you have anywhere in the city centre that you really love and appreciate?
I love French concession as many foreigners, but it's really good. I mean, like it's really cozy in a nice weather, and when it's not like a weekend day, so it's really cool. I mean, like it's something special. It's kind of European vibes, but it's still, you will never find the same place in Europe. You understand? This is Shanghai.
Yeah,
this is only in Shanghai. It's not China. It's not Europe. It's like this thing exists only in Shanghai. It's like unique landscape of Shanghai.
I think Shanghai is one of the most unique cities in that sense that there is nowhere else in the whole world that has such a good protection of its old history, which isn't that old. It's only about 150 years or so.
Protection of their own vibes, let's say. I mean, like,
but also some of the world's most incredible skyscrapers. Like, where else are you going to find a house that's like 150 years old, plus like the world's tallest skyscraper? Back home in England, all of our houses are like 100 years old, but there's also not really that much new stuff. Here in Shanghai, you can't move for skyscrapers. They're all over the place. In England, it's big news when they're building a 30-story building or a 40-story building. Like, everyone goes crazy about it because it's such a big deal in England. But here it's like it just pops up without you even noticing it because they move so quickly and there's so many of them.
The same in Guangzhou and Shenzhen.
But not the same in Beijing. And that's interesting.
Because they really care about the also historical view of Beijing. And they don't trying to do like so many.
One of the really interesting things about Beijing is it's very planned. So if you look at it on a map, it's got these ring roads and then crossroads. It's very like someone sat down and then drew the city and then they went and built it. And that's really interesting in the way that it informs life, traffic, and all of these things, right? So even, for example, it's not that convenient to live there, but on paper it looks great. It looks like very uniform.
It's actually convenience. The thing is, like, I just had my friend who come from Beijing, and we were like passing our crossroads, and then he said, "Oh, okay, we just can go like this." And then he realized, "What? You're not like this squarish like we have in Beijing." He said, like, it's really logical in Beijing. You just like, you can make a round because it's like always a square. It's a square. And here, you don't know never like where the streets goes out.
But here it's more pedestrian friendly. Here is a city for walkers, where there it's a city for cars.
For cycling.
For cycling as well. I mean, for walking is awful. And here in Shanghai, the metro stations are about 10 minutes walk from each other, I would say. In Beijing, on the whole, I feel they're around 20 to 25 minutes. It's not as close as each other. And even when you're inside the metro and you want to change a line, you're still walking like 200-300 meters because of the way that the city is so pre-planned.
Yeah.
So it's not that flexible in that sense.
So deep actual topic. There are a lot of fields and a lot of aspects what we can talk about.
So as you said earlier, the best universities in China are in Beijing, Tsinghua and Beida, so Tsinghua and Peking University. And I was thinking about doing an MBA, and I don't think I would do it in Shanghai, just because if you really want that Chinese experience, like that, the real Chinese experience, I think it would have to be in Beijing.
Yeah, sure. It's interesting that, and yeah, you just mentioned that like Shanghai, you can see a few photos on someone, I don't know, Instagram without location, and you don't know this person related to China, but you will understand this is Shanghai. But many photos from Beijing, it will be the same as many other cities in China. Which means really like Beijing is a part of a big China, while Shanghai still like stand out. And that's why like Shanghainese people likes to show off. This is my theory. Because like Shanghai is by itself is different, show off. So they are also like comes to people's soul, they are also showing off.
I think that's a really nice analogy to think about Beijing and Shanghai. Beijing ultimately is still the people's city. I think a lot of people in China who haven't been to Beijing, they have this like this dream to go there. Like it has a real power, a real history to it that draws people not to live there perhaps, but to go and see the seat of power of China, right? So you go to these big places like Tiananmen, Gugong, Forbidden City, etc., etc., etc. And there's a big list of these places. Whereas I think on the whole, Shanghai just doesn't have it in that way. Like Shanghai is as a city this cool place, but it doesn't have these like must go to places that have like had a place in history in China.
Only French concession.
So I think, like you say, in Shanghai, I think it's the former French concession and the Bund, and really not that much. I mean, it's more about the vibe. So when my friends say, "Hey, what's cool in Shanghai?" I'm like, just go for a walk. Just
and La Rouge and Mint Club. And found. Have you been there? Really, most people asking when you've been to Shanghai about like famous restaurants, clubs, bars.
But it's more the vibe of the city, right? There's no like. There are not many actual sites to go and see. It's just the whole city is, in a way, the whole city is a
Nanxiang ancient town is not bad.
Yes, the countryside of Nanxiang ancient town. Again, we're going to become geographers.
One of the most ancient places in Shanghai, actually, really. You can check the history. We start this episode from top 10 cities for expats in China. And which like Shanghai is the best, Beijing the second place, Shenzhen the third. And there are so many cities and we can make like separate episode about every city. But I'm not sure we should do this because like...
We can make one about Hangzhou because Hangzhou is so nice. It is such a nice city.
You should do a video about cities.
Yeah, oh my God, we should do one. We should do one. Let's do it. Okay, well, I really look forward to that. And I think we've had a really good conversation today about that ultimate topic between Beijing and Shanghai, which all Shanghainese and all Beijingers love to engage in, whether they're locals or they're expats.
And now many Shanghainese people will hate us because we're saying they are show off, and Beijingers because we're saying it's a village. Yeah. Now we are not welcomed in two biggest cities anymore.
Well, like I said, I'm going next week. So I think that ultimately coming from this perspective is we haven't spent that much time in Beijing.
Last year, I spent there totally, I think, around 1 month and a half altogether. Because we had one project and I went there like business trip like monthly.
Wow.
And only after that period I started to kind of like Beijing. Before it was terra incognita for me, and that's why I always was saying like it's not good, blah blah blah, just because I didn't realize that vibes. And then I got some friends who took me to this hutong, very cozy cafes and some other places. I met a lot of people there. And I think they're even foreigners there are different, really.
Yeah, absolutely, 100%. And they really look down on us, man. Like the foreigners there, they really look down on foreigners in Shanghai.
They think we are all here about fun and fashion and blah, blah, blah.
But it's true. How many marketing people have you met here? Like everyone here is in marketing. How many marketing people have you met in Beijing? Like none.
Yeah, they're doing real shit there.
They're doing real stuff there. I will say also though, and I didn't say this at the beginning so as not to put bias on Beijing or Shanghai, but I actually grew up in Beijing for a small part of my life. Did you know that?
Well, no.
You didn't know that? I
For one day?
No, I lived there for a year. Yeah, I used to live in Haidian. You didn't know that?
When you were...
When I was 9 years old.
Really?
Yeah.
And you didn't pick any Chinese at that time?
Well, I picked it up and then I went back like 15 years later with no knowledge of it, right?
Why you stayed there?
So my father's job, we moved around a lot for his work.
So you're a Lao Beijinger.
Yeah, so Lao Beijing.
Actually, the more differences and diversity about China regions, you can know from one of our previous episodes when we talked about difference between South and North, and it's more in general. And now we are coming to like Shanghai and Beijing. So listen please to that thing, and leave your comments and feedback on our Instagrams, on our LinkedIn, on any platform you listen to us, and just let us know maybe what is the better city for you, Beijing, Shanghai, or like your best city, Kunming also.
Okay, fantastic. Well, thank you again so much for listening. We look forward to seeing you next time. This is Lucien.
My name is Artem. And we are Young China.
Yeah, you did it without me saying it. Yes.
One person should say this. I think it's good. Yeah.
Oh, now it's okay.
Yeah, we can make it turn.
Okay,
Next time
okay.
we will say
All right.
We are Young China.
Okay.
Bye-bye.
See you later, guys. Bye-bye.